All right. I say welcome back. Happy Father's Day. Dewbee here. This podcast is about my experiences with being incarcerated slash nut house, loony bin. I've had three stints, one federal, oops, but one voluntary, one involuntary, and the other very, very involuntary. But the first time was because the voices were so overpowering that I just wanted to stop and end everything. And I gotta tell you, those feelings, when they're led on by other voices, especially the ones in your head you can't get rid of, that was a time in my life where I was trying everything in my power to get rid of them, not knowing what exactly was going on. So, the first time I told them the voices, the illusions, the things that were becoming overpowering. So, what they did was basically drugged me, gave me a bed in a room with three other beds, a window into the lobby center, and they were walking around with carts of yogurt, crackers, uh, cheese sticks, things of that nature for the meds. I don't remember much. I was drugged up pretty much the first week or two that I was there. And then I finally got up and walking around and started having regular food, but I had no therapy. I just was pumped full of drugs. I was introduced to lithium and Seroquel and Depakote, the ones that made you a zombie. So I really didn't learn or figure things out during that one. Okay, but as time progressed, um, I got the second incarceration, I would say, when I decided to be a dumbass and break the law. And I told them as I was arrested the time I spent at county, what I was dealing with, and they set me in a cell by myself and fed me through a little door slot, and that's what I did. I took a shower. Was it once every 3 days? And yeah, I was fed medications there, but not as bad. It was interesting how that went. Nobody came to talk to me. Nobody wanted to figure things out. So for 3 months, that's all I did. Got a lot of reading done, but I was still dealing with so much that I wasn't able to focus because of my surroundings. I had total quiet except for the idiots that were next to me. And when you have a mind that races and has mental issues and there's nothing for it to focus on, or you're bored with what's the focus at the time, um, your mind starts wandering and racing towards different situations and how to deal with things differently. For instance, how do you shut the guy up next to you? Well, what can you do? You're stuck in a cell and the people don't trust you because your mental health issues. They don't know anything about it, how to deal with it. They don't have the proper training because at that time, mental health and I would say, the the police, the law enforcement, that that group of individuals have not had the proper training yet. So it's kind of scary when you're in jail and you have oppositions. You have people opposing your every breath. You have issues every day. I realize that that's a cop out or BS line, whatever, but you have to stay on your toes to survive in any kind of situation like that. You're in a group of alpha males. Everybody thinks they're protecting themselves. And I got to tell you, that's a hard thing to deal with when you don't have that in you. I've seen guys get tore up over simple shit being in there. And I've also seen guys come out more powerful because they learned from the experience and dealt with it in a more adult manner. I've seen mental health dealt with in very poor situations that remind me of, if you ever get the chance, there's a American Horror Story whole season when they're in a mental hospital and you see the 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 cells for the mental part. And that was my biggest fear going into all this, is that when I get to my federal facility that I'll be spending time at, will they have the proper mental health, uh, I don't know, programs that I needed, that I could help myself, so when I get out into the real world, I'm not dealing with the same shit I was when I got in. There has to be something while I'm here that I can do to get this taken care of and help myself out. So I'm trying my best to talk to the counselors there at the county, and that was a joke. So when I finally get to my home facility on the island, Washington State, at first getting there, I'm dealing with a lot of anxiety and trauma at the first place, but they take me to a pier, a docking, because this place is on an island. So I've got to take a ferry across. Well, at the ferry station, I've got to do a complete strip search going in. So I'm there, completely naked, getting checked out, cold as hell. Because this is right off of that ocean. And I tell you what, the cold air in that time, it was about September, October. It was cold. So I finally get into all the gear I need to be and get laughed at. Hey, it's cold. Ha ha ha, you're funny. Thank you. But I get on there, shackled up. And the ferry boat ride is actually very decent. You get a good view. You get to hear and see the ocean. You get that ocean air that you're going to have to get used to, because cold salt water, it smells great, but when you're in a concrete cell, it doesn't keep you warm. Trust me there. But when I got there, and they asked me in detail what I was dealing with mentally, and um, believe it or not, I felt very comfortable and relaxed. I was able to describe the things I was dealing with and how I got to where I was at and what I did. And they immediately put me into the program. The mental health station was what they called it, but it was basically a cell block of nothing but mental health patients. And to it was quite awe breathtaking as I walked in there, and I see that there is in the center all these tables and everything, where we ate and did our therapy sessions, but it's just a tall 4-story, you know, 4-tier setup, and it was like pretty cool. All right, no, it wasn't like the images I had in my head. No, no, no. It was actually kind of cool. It felt like Star Trekky, more like if you've ever seen Guardians of the Galaxy, and how they had those tiers going up, and you see the glass and everybody walking around. That was cool that way. It was relaxing. People were actually relaxed. So you know you were going into a good atmosphere at the moment. There was no anxiety, no pressure. I was explained in detail everything that was going on, where I was going to be staying, how they did the food, that only certain individuals were allowed to eat in the center. We all had to go to the cafeteria where, ha ha ha, they had a salad bar with different, one thing about, penitentiaries is that they got good food. So, anyways, as they were explaining to me everything in detail, I was realizing that these people might be able to help me. I might be able to get something accomplished here. But I'm also in the back of my head still not trusting anyone. And I don't even trust myself half the time. So I get settled in, you know, 3 or 4 days in. I'm in the center and we're sitting around. I'm listening to the old timers talking. I'm not yet involved or comfortable with anyone. The only one I've got is my cellie, and he is a diehard meth head fan. He every night he would tell me different ways of how to create a meth chemical form to smoke. Now, granted, all of these things were poison, plain and simple. And I'll give you an example. One of his favorites was he would take a iron or steel tube and have it rigged to where he can hold it, and then he would take a torch, heat the tube all the way up. Now the tube has to have a cap at the end that you're able to unscrew. He would spray inside after this tube was red hot, raid only the blue can, only the blue can now. He would spray while it's red hot, and he said that the steam was intense and the smell was bad. But once it was done and cooled down, you open up the back and crack it a little bit, and all these crystals would fall out. He said you can smoke most of those in a couple of days, and you wouldn't eat anything for a week, right? These are just the small things that he would talk about every night before bedtime. Every night for a long, long time. Okay, so anyways, back to the game plan here. A couple of days in, I'm listening to these old timers, and all of a sudden, everyone looks up, and there is this big Samoan dude. I mean, huge dude. And he starts yelling straight. Now, granted, he's on the fourth tier, okay, and he's yelling out real loud. Um, we couldn't understand really what he was saying, but what was more interesting is that as he was yelling out and chanting, he was lifting up his legs to go over the bars and the railings. Apparently, he was going to try and fly. Well, he tried. And as he was yelling out whatever he was yelling out, he jumped before anybody could get to him. You have guards on all the tiers. Before anybody could get to him, he jumps. And he tries. He does. I give him an A for effort, but he tries. He realizes in mid jump he screwed up. So he tries to do a superhero landing. I shit you not, he did. It was one of those things that you just did not want to watch, but you can't look away from. So when he does a superhero landing, everyone sees that it shatters both of his ankles and the legs, both. The shins popped out of his skin. So that is basically what everybody there with mental health issues is staring at. A man that couldn't fly. So, with that happening, the first 3 days, I believe it was 3 days, my first 3 days, with that occurring, something told me that I was in for a real fun time. I mean, I've never really noticed anything like that. I don't think a lot of us did that were in there, but it's also something we will never forget. A man, I did about 350, 4 stories up, trying to be Superman, yelling at the spirits in front of him. We never saw him again. Yeah, we never heard anything about. We kept asking what happened, and nothing. Nobody knew anything about it. So, with that in mind, our next group, we're all in a circle, and we're trying to get them to tell us what was going on. We come up with every excuse for them to tell us the reason why. For safety reasons, whatever, and nothing. So we quit. Anyways, these groups were very instrumental in letting us bring things out because it was uncensored. There was no judgment. A lot of the guys in there were in there because of mistakes or driven. Their mind had their own control, their own program they were following. A lot of us had the opportunity to discuss what was going on because some of us were feeling the same. Some of us were having the similar issues. But it's also the same place where I found out or figured out that we all have a different way of looking at things. We all have our own way. Nobody is the same. Nobody has the most, let's just say, even twins, they don't think identical. Nobody on this planet has an identical brain going. So we all think differently. We all have different conclusions. We feel different circumstances occurring from what we do. We deal with what we have to. It's a survival mechanism. So while we were going through group and individual, we were developing ways that our mind can figure out to cope, triggers. Um, like, for instance, we use the example of the flying Samoan. That's what we called it. That we all had different emotions going through as we watched that happen. Through group and through individual, we figured things out and how our mind developed feeling and seeing something so traumatic. So it was actually like a blessing in disguise. We took the good out of the bad, and we were trying to figure out where to send a thank you letter to because it gave us something of an example for all of us to wonder how we would develop as we saw it or something of that nature in action. As my time there progressed, so did my therapy, and also seeing the ugly side of what this disease, mental health, can do to somebody. I saw an inmate with his roommate. The inmate was actually raping him, and the two guards were trying to get in because he had closed the door and they weren't able to get in the way he had it locked up. So as the rape was going, they had about 4 guards pounding at the door. Finally, they got in. It took all 4 of them to get this guy down. The victim, his cellmate, was actually brutally beaten up. They had to basically carry him out to where they could get the stretcher, and they took him out. They had the other guy pinned down, 2 different guards. The rest of us were in our cell, but we still had the windows because it gave us clarity. We didn't feel so confined. So we were able to watch as they had a wheelchair restraint system go up, take him in, and as he was strapped down, he kept fighting, kept kicking, and they tased him while one of the guards was actually holding on to his foot when they tased him. And a lot of the shock went to him too, so that was fun to watch because apparently the guard pissed his pants. But on a mental health ward, you don't want your guards to be, you know, having pissing pants issues. Anyways, yeah. But as they were doing the wheelchair thing and getting this guy out, he kept on yelling, free the white people. Free the white people. Okay. Now, it's funny because the guy was Korean. And when I say he was Korean, he was Korean. I all up and down, but he free the white people, and he was raping this guy. Okay, so it I don't know how in the hell they got the dude's pants on as they got him into the chair, but hey, I thank God they did. But I don't know if they freed the white people or not, but hey, who knows? I'm more of a Eddie Murphy fan when he does his kill the white people. Anyways, but as I watched all this happen, there's blood all over the place. The guards coming out, piss all over his pants. The other dudes finally getting to the. This all happened on the third floor. So we're barely seeing what's going on, but as they come down through the tiers, you could see in the stairwells, and you start hearing the guards talking, and we're still able to hear things because we got air holes. Hello, thank you. We're not completely caged up, but we got that going, and you can hear the guards going. It's like, okay, who's gonna take him to the ward? And the guy is screaming. It's like, kill the white people. No, free the white people. See, I'm screwing myself up. I like Eddie Murphy's version better. But no, he was freeing the white people. And I don't understand. And in group, we discussed it as well because one of the guys was actually in the cell next to him. So he heard a lot of what was going on and wasn't able to do anything because the guards were there by time and the doors were shut and he was just listening to it, and he described in detail what he heard. So we had that in group and discussing in detail how we felt about that situation. Free the white people. Yeah. And I got to tell you, most of the people in that mental ward were white. Believe it or not, I don't understand it because everybody's crazy. I just don't know why. White people were everywhere. So, that being said, I think everything was pretty good and tight until they had one suicide. They didn't have him on suicide watch, and the dude, he did the towel trick from on top of the door frame. He shut his door with the towel on the outside of it, and he just plopped down, and it worked. Apparently, the dude. A lot of the guards were trying to figure out what was going on with the sheet coming out the door. Trying to get into the door, it was hard to do, and they finally got in, and the dude was gone. It doesn't take very long, and those guys walk around and they're talking to other people, and you don't notice those things. And it was a big. There were a lot of new guards after that, and some old ones were transferred out. But that was a big deal for a while. We had to stay in our rooms for like 3 days, 4 days, and as soon as I got out, or we got out of that room, we went through our counseling, and I had a sit-in counseling session in the office, and we were discussing a few things, and the counselor brought up family, and I said, "Yeah, my mother and sister live out in Virginia," and as we were talking and getting all that, uh, going through the issues I was having with my mother and she gets a phone call. Lo and behold, it's my sister on the other end. Okay, and I couldn't write this up. I mean, this is like movie shit here, but it happened because the counselor, as soon as she's heard that, it's like, yeah, patch him through. Jenna's on the phone looking for me. They had transferred her all over trying to get a hold of me, so they got her to my counselor, my in charge. And I was in the office at the same time. So she handed the phone and I talked to my sister. She got me a few books and we got to talking for a while and it was great, man. So after that, I went through the counseling and finally figured out and got the counselors that were actually good at what they do. It took a series of them because, all right, the program there, they were using interns for medical purposes, schooling, and these young kids having ideas, and that generation, they were younger than myself, but not too far off. Okay, I'd say about 4 or 5 years, but their ideas they were actually going and focusing on one particular issue on one particular person. They had that ability because we were stationary. We weren't going anywhere and they had their own time frame. They were accumulating hours writing theses, well, however you want to say it, but they were writing their own papers, trying to get either published, doctorates, however. But a lot of these people were actually working on being, you know, psychiatrists, therapists. So they were using us, and thank God they did because they helped me figure out how to deal with my own problems and get my shit straight. Okay. So, and the second incarceration was a godsend. It was a blessing. But as time progresses, so does your mental health. If you don't get the proper training, focus, understanding, knowledge of what you're doing and what you're dealing with, you will lose all the abilities of, like I said, focus. Being able to understand what your mind wants. Because it's going to tell you, you just got to figure out what it wants and how to get it there. So, fast forward to my third incarceration. That was all me. My sister helped me. I had to get in and get my medications. I was hopelessly wanting to end everything because I couldn't figure my shit out. And there was nothing happened really. My sister helped me out. It was at a time where my wife and I were having our own issues, and so in that nothing really happened. So, but as time progresses, I don't know what's going to happen. I can't tell you. But being incarcerated, whether you do it involuntarily, voluntarily, or by law, it ends up being a choice where you can get your medications, you can get help, you can get your therapy, you can get everything you need by understanding. And the only way a lot of us can understand is by going through the process of voluntarily putting ourselves in a facility that can help with the medications, that can help with programs that can guide you and help you learn how to focus on the triggers, on the ability to understand where your mind is taking you. You have to understand your mind controls everything your body does. So you need to get your mind healthy in order for your body to understand and get healthy as well. So, with all that, I would like to say peace out. Happy Father's Day. And this is to my sis. Love y'all. Dewbee out.